The calm before the storm. The galaxy was still. Ships drifted through space in perfect silence, the stars twinkling far away in the cold darkness. For years, humanity had been considered weak. Their fleet was small, their technology outdated. The galaxy's most powerful empires, the Xerans and the Dracari, had long laughed at the idea of Earth's forces ever becoming a threat. Captain Sarah Dalton, commander of humanity's fleet, stood silently on the bridge of the lead ship, the Eagle. The vastness of space stretched out before her, and she knew that everything they had fought for, everything they had worked toward, had come down to this moment. She had spent years preparing for this battle. The fleet had trained, built new weapons, and developed strategies unlike anything the alien races had ever seen. But despite all the preparation, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change forever. The crew on the bridge moved about quietly, each person focused on their tasks, but there was an underlying tension in the air. No one spoke of it directly, but everyone could feel it. This wasn't just another mission. This was a turning point for humanity. In the distance, the planets of the Dracari Empire hung like silent sentinels in space, their massive fleets ready to crush anything that stood in their way. They had been watching humanity for years, thinking it was only a matter of time before Earth would be erased from the galaxy's map. But Sarah knew they were wrong. Her fleet was ready. The secret weapons, the advanced strategies, and the strength of humanity's will had been underestimated. Today, Earth would show the galaxy that it was not a weak, defenseless planet. Today, humanity would rise. "Captain, we're receiving a message from Fleet Command," reported Lieutenant Mark Ross, the communications officer. His voice broke the silence in the command room. Sarah turned to him, her eyes sharp. "Patch it through," she ordered. A holographic display flickered to life in front of her. The image of Admiral Jane Turner, commander of humanity's entire military operation, appeared in front of Sarah. The Admiral's face was serious, but there was a flicker of confidence in her eyes. "Sarah," the Admiral began, her voice steady, "the time has come. We've made it this far, and there's no turning back. The Dracari fleet is entering the war zone now. You know what to do. The success of this mission could change the course of history for humanity." Sarah nodded. "Understood, Admiral. We're ready. We've taken a huge risk," Admiral Turner continued, "but it's our only chance. Good luck, Captain." With a simple flick of her hand, the transmission ended, and Sarah was left alone with her thoughts once more. "Status report," she said, her voice cold and clear. The bridge crew immediately responded, moving with the efficiency that only comes from years of training and preparation. "All ships in the fleet are ready, Captain. Shields at maximum, weapons primed," Lieutenant Ross reported. Sarah glanced at the starboard window, the black void of space outside, and felt a surge of adrenaline. The Dracari were powerful, but they didn't know what was coming. No one knew. "Prepare for battle stations. All hands on deck," she commanded. The crew moved with urgency, but there was no panic. Everyone knew their role. This was their moment. In the distance, Sarah could see the first ships of the Dracari fleet, enormous warships that loomed like dark mountains against the backdrop of the stars. They were a terrifying sight. Massive hulls bristled with weapons, and their speed was unmatched. The Dracari believed that humanity was too weak to even attempt to fight. They didn't realize how wrong they were. The calm of space was shattered by the hum of engines as humanity's fleet powered up, the ship's engines igniting one by one. Sarah's heart raced as the fleet slowly moved into position. The moment was finally here. They had waited so long for this, trained endlessly, and sacrificed so much. Sarah looked out at the stars again, her mind racing. What would the galaxy think when humanity emerged victorious? What would happen to Earth's place in the galaxy? Would the Dracari finally see the humans as equals? Or would they crush humanity and send them back into the Dark Age? As her thoughts swirled, the crew remained focused. The time for doubt was over. The human fleet was prepared, and soon, the galaxy would feel their power. "Captain, we've entered the war zone," Lieutenant Ross called out. "Good," Sarah replied. "Now, we wait." The calm before the storm was almost over. The Drakari fleet was on the move, and humanity's fleet was ready. Sarah took a deep breath and gave the command that would change everything. "All ships, engage." In an instant, the quiet of space was replaced by the roar of engines, the hum of weapons systems powering up, and the overwhelming sound of history being written. Humanity's fleet had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same again. The battle was about to begin. The first strike. The silence of space had barely settled when the first shots were fired. The Drakari fleet, confident in their superior firepower, had underestimated the speed and precision of humanity's strategy. Sarah Dalton stood at the helm of the Eagle, eyes locked on the approaching enemy fleet. Her fingers danced across the controls, her heart steady. The first wave was crucial. "Captain, enemy ships are entering firing range," reported Lieutenant Ross, his voice cool but tinged with urgency. "Hold fire until I give the signal," Sarah ordered. The Drakari ships were massive, sleek, and menacing. Their engines were larger than any humanity had ever built. They were designed for one thing: to strike terror into the hearts of their enemies. And yet, Sarah knew that despite their terrifying appearance, the Drakari were about to learn just how wrong they were about humanity. In her mind, Sarah could already see the movements of the battle. The Eagle and her fleet were smaller, but they were nimble, quick. And more importantly, they had something the Drakari did not: strategy. Humanity had spent years developing the new technologies and tactics that would change the course of this war. The Drakari had dismissed humanity as weak and outclassed, but today they would learn that humanity was anything but. "Now, Captain," Lieutenant Ross asked, his fingers hovering over his controls, waiting for her command. "Now," Sarah replied, voice sharp as she gave the command. Suddenly, the stillness of space was shattered. A flash of light erupted as humanity's first strike hit one of the Drakari ships. The enemy vessel shuddered, its shields flaring as the energy blast collided with its side. The Drakari had not been prepared for this kind of assault. The precision and power of humanity's weapons caught them off guard. Their enormous warships were built for raw power, but they lacked the agility and technology needed to respond to such fast and calculated attacks. The Drakari ships scattered, trying to evade the unexpected onslaught. But it was too late. Humanity's fleet moved as one, a coordinated force that was faster than the Drakari could react to. Direct hit on target. "They're scrambling to regroup," Ross exclaimed, excitement creeping into his voice. Sarah's gaze never wavered. She knew that the Drakari would soon realize that this wasn't just an ordinary attack. This was a statement. This was humanity telling the galaxy that they would no longer be a victim. They would no longer be the weak, helpless species everyone had underestimated. "Maintain pressure," Sarah ordered, her voice calm but commanding. "We don't stop until they break." Around her, the bridge crew moved with perfect synchronization. They'd practiced for this moment for years. They'd trained for every possible outcome, every countermeasure the Drakari might employ. And now, with the first strike delivered, they were seeing their hard work pay off. In the distance, the Drakari fleet tried to retaliate, their weapons lighting up the void of space. But they were too slow. Humanity's fleet darted in and out of their line of fire, the ships dodging incoming blasts and returning fire with pinpoint accuracy. The Drakari were accustomed to dominating their enemies with overwhelming force, but they had never encountered a force as coordinated and swift as humanity's fleet. "Captain, one of their destroyers is breaking off. They're trying to regroup," Lieutenant Ross reported. "We're not giving them the chance," Sarah replied, her eyes narrowing. "Target their command ship. Take out their leader. If we can cripple their command structure, the rest of them will fall apart." The Eagle and the rest of humanity's fleet changed course, aiming directly at the Drakari's flagship. It was a massive ship, its dark metal hull scarred with the history of countless victories. But today, it would face something it had never seen before: humanity's resolve. The battle was far from over, but the first wave had been a victory. Humanity's fleet had shown that they were not to be underestimated. The Drakari, the galaxy's most feared warriors, were not invincible. They were not unstoppable. Humanity's fleet had proven their power, and now they were about to show the galaxy that Earth's strength was not just in its weapons, but in its spirit. "Captain," Ross spoke again, voice low but filled with anticipation. "We've broken through their lines. We're close to the flagship." Sarah's heart quickened. The time had come. The Drakari fleet had no idea what was about to hit them. "Finish this," she said, her voice steady and filled with purpose. The Eagle and its fleet surged forward, ready to bring the fight to the heart of the Drakari Empire. The Drakari's first shock. The Drakari flagship, Imperium's Wrath, loomed ahead in the vast emptiness of space. Its dark, menacing hull, bristling with weapons, was the symbol of Drakari dominance. For centuries, no fleet had dared challenge its might. Yet here they were, human ships, smaller, quicker, and more precise than anything the Drakari had faced before. The battle had already begun to turn in humanity's favor, but Sarah Dalton knew the hardest part was still ahead. The Drakari had underestimated humanity, thinking their sheer size and firepower would be enough to break the Earth's forces. But that belief was already crumbling as the Eagle and the rest of humanity's fleet closed in on their command ship. Sarah's mind raced as she watched the movements of the enemy through her tactical screen. The Imperium's Wrath had already begun deploying smaller ships for support: fighter craft, bombers, and elite Drakari warships. But Sarah was ready. She wasn't just reacting. She was in control of the battle. She had studied Drakari tactics for years, anticipating their next move. "Captain, enemy fighters approaching from the left," Lieutenant Ross warned. His eyes darted across his console as he tracked the incoming ships. "Evasive maneuvers, engage at will," Sarah commanded, her voice unwavering. "Bring us in closer. Target their engines." The Eagle angled sharply, weaving between the Drakari fighters that were now closing in. The enemy ships had strength, but humanity's fleet had precision. Sarah's strategy was simple: make the Drakari react, force them to make mistakes, and take advantage of every opening. The first wave of Drakari fighters swooped in, attempting to take down the Eagle with a barrage of missiles. But Sarah had anticipated this. With a flick of her wrist, the Eagle dove downward, narrowly avoiding the missiles. Her ship's advanced shields flared brightly, absorbing the few shots that managed to land. The Drakari fighters were persistent, but they lacked the coordination Sarah's fleet had mastered. She could see it now. The Drakari were starting to panic. "Captain, we're being flanked by bombers," Ross reported, but his voice lacked the urgency it had earlier. "Let them come," Sarah replied, a sharp smile tugging at her lips. "We've got this." In an instant, the Eagle accelerated, heading straight toward the incoming Drakari bombers. They had been trained to attack in formation, assuming that no fleet could move as fast or as precisely as humanity's. But humanity's strength wasn't in the size of their fleet. It was in their ability to outthink and outmaneuver their opponents. The Eagle passed through the bomber formation like a ghost, its advanced targeting systems locking on to the lead ship. With a precise shot, the ship exploded in a flash of light, the shockwaves tearing apart the bombers behind it. The remaining fighters tried to retreat, but they were too slow. "Enemies neutralized, Captain," Lieutenant Ross reported. Sarah allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction, but she knew the battle was far from over. The real challenge was still ahead: the Imperium's Wrath. As the Eagle and its fleet pushed forward, the Drakari flagship loomed ever larger. Its defenses were formidable, but not invincible. Humanity had come prepared, and Sarah had every intention of making sure the Drakari knew just how powerful Earth's fleet had become. Target their primary weapons, Sarah ordered. We need to cripple their offensive capability. The Eagle and its supporting ships swarmed toward the massive flagship, unleashing a storm of laser fire, plasma bursts, and missile strikes. The Imperium's wrath retaliated with its own weapons, sending waves of energy blasts toward the incoming human ships. But Sarah's fleet was too quick, too precise. The human ships danced around the Drakari blasts, delivering their own destructive payloads with deadly accuracy. The Imperium's wrath shook under the assault. Its shields were buckling under the strain, unable to keep up with the relentless precision of humanity's attack. The Drakari had underestimated the humans' ability to strike quickly, and now they were paying the price. Their flagship was in chaos, its weapon systems faltering, and its crew scrambling to defend against the onslaught. "Captain, their shields are weakening," Ross said, his voice almost in disbelief. "We've almost got them." Sarah watched the progress closely, her heart steady, but her mind focused. "Take out their engines," she commanded. "It's time to finish this." The Eagle fired once more, a barrage of laser fire aimed directly at the flagship's engines. The Imperium's wrath tried to evade, but it was too late. The shots hit their mark, and the flagship's engines exploded in a brilliant flash. The massive Drakari ship veered off course, its remaining crew fighting desperately to regain control. Sarah's gaze never left the screen. She could almost hear the Drakari commanders scrambling, realizing that their once mighty fleet was now in disarray. They were no longer the apex predators of the galaxy. Humanity had shattered that illusion. "Enemy flagship disabled, Captain," Ross said, a note of triumph in his voice. Sarah allowed herself a breath, but she didn't celebrate yet. The battle was far from over. The Drakari fleet was still a threat, and there were still countless more to face. But one thing was certain: the Eagle and her fleet had struck a blow that the Drakari would not soon forget. And Sarah knew, as the human ships closed in on the remaining enemies, that the galaxy was about to witness a new force, a force that would make them all think twice before underestimating humanity again. "You said, the tides turn." As the Imperium's wrath shuddered, crippled by the precision of humanity's attack, the remaining Drakari ships attempted to retreat. They had underestimated the humans at every turn, assuming their immense firepower and vast numbers would secure them an easy victory. But now, in the cold expanse of space, it was becoming clear: the Drakari had been wrong. Humanity wasn't just a minor threat. It was a force to be reckoned with. Sarah watched the Drakari retreat, but her mind stayed sharp. There was no room for mistakes now. As commander of the Eagle, she knew that every decision could mean the difference between victory and defeat. Humanity had gained the upper hand, but the Drakari fleet was far from broken. They still had strength, and Sarah wasn't about to let her fleet relax. "Captain, the remaining Drakari ships are trying to regroup," Ross said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "They're coordinating for a final push. We can't let them get back into formation." Sarah nodded, her fingers moving across her command console. "Prepare all fighters. We'll finish this. Take them before they can recover." The Eagle surged forward once more, joined by humanity's other ships. The sight of Earth's fleet, unified and ready for battle, was a force of its own. The once dominant Drakari fleet now seemed vulnerable, scattered and disjointed as the humans pursued without hesitation. Sarah's command was simple: no quarter. They had already crippled the Drakari flagship. Now it was time to finish what they had started. Humanity's fleet wouldn't stop until every Drakari ship was either destroyed or driven from the battlefield. The humans moved with terrifying precision, launching fighter jets in all directions to outflank the Drakari ships. The smaller, faster ships made quick work of the Drakari's weaker support vessels, while the larger warships targeted the enemy's remaining heavy artillery and capital ships. As the first wave of Drakari fighters was destroyed, the remaining ships realized they were cornered. The Drakari weren't used to being on the defensive. They had always fought offensively, and the sight of humanity's fleet closing in with no intention of retreating was enough to shake their resolve. But the Drakari weren't giving up. They launched a final desperate assault, swarming toward the Eagle in a bid to destroy their flagship. The space around Sarah's ship lit up with the brilliance of laser fire as both sides clashed in a violent fury. The Drakari ships were determined to inflict as much damage as possible before their inevitable defeat. "Shields at 70%, Captain," Lieutenant Ross shouted, his voice filled with urgency. "They're targeting our engines." Sarah's grip tightened on the armrest of her command chair, her expression focused. "Brace for impact. All hands, prepare for evasive maneuvers." With a sharp command, Sarah ordered the Eagle to drop into a steep dive, evading the Drakari's relentless attack. The Eagle spun and darted between enemy fire, twisting through space as missiles and energy blasts streaked by, narrowly missing. The ship's shields flared with each impact, but Sarah trusted in her crew's ability to hold firm. At the same time, the rest of humanity's fleet pushed forward, refusing to let the Drakari regroup. Fighter jets streaked through the battlefield, picking off isolated Drakari ships. The larger warships formed a protective wall around the Eagle, defending their flagship from any potential final assault. "We've got them, Captain," Ross said with a note of confidence now. "They're falling apart." Sarah watched as the last Drakari ships began to lose cohesion. Some ships tried to retreat, others attempted to regroup, but it was too late. The humans were closing in, and no matter how hard the Drakari fought, their defeat was inevitable. The Drakari fleet was no longer the well-oiled machine it had been when it first arrived. They were scattered and panicked, and their leadership had failed them. On the other hand, humanity's fleet was organized, disciplined, and relentless. Sarah's heart raced as she gave the final order. "Fire everything we've got. Don't let them escape." The Eagle unleashed a barrage of firepower that seemed to shake the varied fabric of space. Lasers and missiles exploded from the human ships, striking the remaining Drakari vessels with pinpoint accuracy. The last of the Drakari fighters exploded in a fiery blaze, their once proud ships now reduced to debris drifting in the void. Sarah leaned back in her chair, her eyes scanning the battlefield. It was over. The Drakari fleet had been destroyed, their command ships disabled. Earth's fleet had emerged victorious. "Enemy fleet neutralized, Captain," Ross reported, his voice calm but tinged with awe. The silence that followed felt deafening. The battle was over, and humanity had proven itself not just a threat, but a force that could not be ignored. Sarah allowed herself a small, satisfied smile, but she didn't celebrate. There would be more battles to fight, more challenges ahead. But for now, humanity had won. The Eagle turned, drifting through the debris of the fallen Drakari fleet. The silence of space stretched around them as Sarah looked out over the battlefield. The galaxy would soon know that humanity had arrived, and they would no longer be underestimated. "Prepare for the next phase," Sarah said, her voice steady and resolute. "This is just the beginning." "You said." The aftermath of victory. The battlefield was eerily silent now. The once chaotic space was now littered with debris and wreckage from the Drakari fleet, the remnants of their once proud warships floating lifeless in the dark expanse. Sarah stood on the command bridge of the Eagle, her eyes scanning the shattered remains of the enemy fleet. The last echoes of battle still reverberated in her mind, but there was no time to rest. Her hands rested lightly on the control panel, the hum of the ship's systems, the only sound in the cold quiet. She had always known this moment would come. Humanity would be tested, and now they had passed with flying colors. But there was something more to consider now, something that lingered in the back of her mind. "Captain," Ross spoke up from behind her, his voice steady, but holding an edge of concern. "We've taken heavy losses. The Eagle is intact, but many of our support ships are heavily damaged. The fighters did well, but we'll need repairs and reinforcements before we can move forward." Sarah nodded, but her mind wasn't on the damage to their fleet. "What about the Drakari command ship?" she asked, her gaze fixed on the fading remnants of the fleet. Ross hesitated for a moment before replying. "It's gone. Crushed in the final barrage. The flagship didn't make it." Sarah's lips tightened. The Drakari had thrown everything they had at them, and yet humanity had emerged victorious. The thought of their final desperate push only underscored how hard the fight had been. But now that it was over, it was time to think of the bigger picture. The Drakari weren't the only threat the galaxy faced, and humanity had proven itself capable of more than just surviving. "Start the damage assessments," Sarah ordered. "We need to be ready for the next battle. I won't rest until we've secured our position here. No more waiting. No more hesitation." The crew of the Eagle moved quickly, the sound of urgent conversations and the quiet beep of the control panels filling the bridge. The once rigid lines of the crew now seemed a bit more relaxed. Victory had a way of lifting spirits, but Sarah knew that the war was far from over. If anything, it had just begun. The galaxy had taken notice of humanity, and she didn't expect them to wait long before they sent another wave to challenge them. The fleet was already repairing the damaged ships, and the fighters were being refueled and rearmed. Yet despite the hectic pace of recovery, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The Drakari were only one enemy. She had no doubt that there were others in the galaxy who were watching, waiting to see if humanity could hold its ground. "Captain, we've received a transmission," a crew member called from across the bridge. "It's from the Galactic Council." The word sent a chill down Sarah's spine. She didn't have to hear the message to know what was coming. The Galactic Council had been silent in the face of the Drakari invasion, unwilling to act when humanity had been on the edge of extinction. But now, with humanity having proven its might, the galaxy was bound to take notice. "Put it through," Sarah said, her voice steady but laced with suspicion. A moment later, the screen flickered to life, and a tall, silver-skinned alien appeared. His eyes were narrow, and his face was an expressionless mask of diplomacy. He wore the robes of a high-ranking council member, a symbol of authority in the galaxy. "Captain Sarah," the alien said, his voice smooth and calculated. "I trust you are aware of the situation." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "I'm aware. The Drakari fleet was just defeated. The galaxy has a new power to reckon with." The alien's lips curled into a slight, disapproving smile. "Indeed. However, your victory has not gone unnoticed. The Galactic Council is concerned about the sudden rise of human power. We've always regarded your species as a minor player in the grand scheme of the galaxy. But now, things have changed. You've proven yourself a formidable force, but with that comes a responsibility. A responsibility to uphold peace and order in the galaxy." Sarah clenched her jaw. "We don't need your lectures. The Drakari attacked us. We fought back. If anyone should be concerned, it's you." The alien's eyes gleamed coldly. "We understand your position, Captain. But the balance of power in the galaxy is delicate. Your sudden rise has the potential to disrupt that balance. Be warned. Your actions will have consequences. The Council will be watching." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Sarah standing in stunned silence. She wasn't surprised. The Council's message had been clear. Humanity was now a target, not just because of their strength, but because their very existence had upset the established order of the galaxy. "Captain, what do we do now?" Ross asked, his voice breaking the tension that hung heavy in the room. Sarah took a deep breath, her mind racing with the weight of the situation. "We prepare, we rebuild, and we show the galaxy that we're not afraid. Humanity won't back down. Not now. Not ever." She turned back to face the bridge. This was just the beginning. The fight is far from over. The crew was silent, but their resolve was clear. They had won a battle, but the war, both in the stars and within the political landscape of the galaxy, was just beginning, and Sarah knew that humanity would be ready. They had faced extinction once before. Now they had the power to change the course of history, and they wouldn't let anyone stand in their way. The rising tension, The day after the Galactic Council's chilling message, the mood aboard the Eagle had shifted. No longer was the crew basking in the glory of victory. Instead, there was an undercurrent of tension, a quiet awareness that humanity's actions were being closely watched. The warnings from the Council echoed in Sarah's mind, and she could sense that the crew was starting to feel it too. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The real challenge lay ahead. Sarah sat in her private quarters, looking out at the endless expanse of space. The stars twinkled like distant jewels, but now they seemed colder, more distant. She was used to the weight of responsibility. But this felt different. The message from the Council had reminded her of how small humanity once was in the grand scheme of the galaxy. But now they were on the radar, and every move they made would be scrutinized. "Captain," a voice interrupted her thoughts, and she turned to see Ross standing in the doorway. His face was serious, his brow furrowed in concern. "The fleet's repairs are on schedule, but there's something you need to see." Sarah nodded and stood, her mind immediately shifting from her thoughts to the mission at hand. The feeling of uncertainty still hung over her, but she knew better than to let it show. She followed Ross to the command deck. As they entered, Sarah could feel the eyes of the crew on her. She could sense their unease, the same tension she had felt earlier in her quarters. The ship's screens were filled with data, maps, and communications from the outer rim. But what caught her attention was a fresh transmission, flashing on the central monitor. "Is this from the Galactic Council?" Sarah asked, her voice sharp. "No," Ross replied, shaking his head. "This is something different. It's a distress signal from one of our outposts in the fringe sector. They're reporting strange activity, possibly another invasion force. We're not sure yet." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. After the Drakkari's defeat, she had expected the galaxy to be silent for a while. But this, another enemy, possibly preparing to strike. It felt too soon. The tension in the room thickened as the crew waited for Sarah's orders. "How long until we reach the fringe sector?" Sarah asked, her voice steady but laced with urgency. "At least 4 days, Captain," Ross replied. "We can't waste time. If this is another attack, we need to get there fast." "Then we leave immediately," Sarah said, her tone leaving no room for debate. "Prepare the fleet. We can't afford to let this go unchecked." As the crew scrambled to action, Sarah's mind raced. Another invasion. It felt like they had only just finished one fight, and now they were being called into another. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was testing humanity, pushing them to see just how much they could handle. The Council had made it clear that their victory had stirred something in the galaxy, but this was different. This felt like the beginning of something far more dangerous. "Captain," Ross called out again, his voice tight with tension. "There's one more thing you need to know. The message, it was intercepted. Someone's been watching us. Whoever sent that distress signal wasn't the only one out there." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "So, we're not just dealing with another enemy. Someone knew we'd respond." "It looks that way," Ross confirmed. "Whoever this is, they're playing a game. A dangerous one." Sarah stared at the screen in front of her. The implications were clear. This wasn't just another skirmish. This was a calculated move. Someone, or something, had orchestrated this situation, knowing that humanity would be forced to act. The question was, who and why? "Send a message to all fleet commanders," Sarah ordered. "We need to stay sharp. We're not just heading into a battle. We're heading into a trap." The crew fell into a rhythm as the fleet prepared for departure. The hum of the ship's engines grew louder, the soft vibrations of the ship a constant reminder of the power that now lay beneath their feet. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They had proven their strength, but in doing so, they had made enemies, and this new threat was only the beginning. The Eagle broke through the atmosphere of the space station, its engines roaring to life as it set course for the fringe sector. As Sarah stood at the command deck, looking out at the vast unknown, She felt the weight of the galaxy's eyes upon her. The message from the Galactic Council, the intercepted distress signal, it was all connected. Someone wanted to see humanity fall, and they were ready to do whatever it took to make it happen. The crew was ready, but Sarah knew that this would be their toughest battle yet. Not only would they be fighting to defend their home, but they would be fighting against a galaxy that feared their rise to power. They had won the last battle, but this time, the stakes were higher, and the enemies were more cunning. As the fleet moved forward, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. The battle for humanity's place in the galaxy had only just begun, and the road ahead was filled with uncertainty. But one thing was clear: humanity would fight with everything they had. And if the galaxy didn't understand that yet, it soon would. The unseen enemy. The fleet moved steadily toward the fringe sector, its engines thrumming with power. The crew aboard the Eagle was prepared for the unknown, yet an unshakable unease hung in the air. As they approached the coordinates of the distress signal, the vast blackness of space stretched before them like an endless void, offering no clues to what lay ahead. Sarah stood at the helm, watching the stars streak past, a constant reminder that they were far from home. The familiar hum of the ship was comforting, but it did little to quiet the growing tension in her chest. She could feel the eyes of her crew on her, each one hoping for direction, for certainty. "Captain," Ross's voice broke through her thoughts. "We've reached the fringe sector. The outpost should be within range in a few minutes." Sarah nodded, her gaze still fixed on the view ahead. "Prepare to launch the scout ships. I want eyes on the ground before we get any closer." The outpost was a small installation, tucked away on the edge of the sector, surrounded by an almost impenetrable field of asteroids. It was a strategic location, meant to serve as a buffer against any potential threats. But if the distress signal was anything to go by, it had been compromised. "Scout ships are ready, Captain," Ross reported, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "Launch them," Sarah commanded, "and make sure they report back immediately if they detect anything unusual." The fleet held its position as the scout ships deployed, darting into the asteroid field like swift shadows. Time seemed to stretch as they waited for the reports to come in. Every minute felt like an eternity. Sarah's fingers tapped nervously against the command console, her mind running through every possible scenario. Then, the first transmission came through. "Captain, this is Scout 1. A voice crackled through the comms. "We've reached the outpost. There's no sign of any immediate danger, but there's something strange. The outpost is fully operational, but it looks like it's been abandoned. We're picking up strange readings from the surrounding space." Sarah's heart raced. Abandoned. That wasn't right. The outpost had been operational only hours ago. The crew couldn't have abandoned it unless something forced them to. "Send us the coordinates," Sarah ordered. "We'll send a team to investigate." Moments later, the Eagle dropped out of warp and moved into position above the outpost. The scout ships returned to the fleet, but the unease in their transmissions had only intensified. Whatever was happening on the ground, it was clear that they weren't dealing with a typical attack. The landing party was quickly assembled, and Sarah watched as they prepared to board the transport ships. Her mind raced. What could have happened to the outpost crew? And more importantly, what kind of enemy were they about to face? The Council had warned them, but this felt different. "Be ready for anything," Sarah told the team as they boarded. "We don't know what we're walking into." The transports descended to the surface, their thrusters cutting through the air as they touched down on the barren landscape. The crew disembarked, weapons at the ready. The outpost's walls loomed ahead, silent and dark. Something was off, and it wasn't just the eerie silence. The air felt thick, charged with an unseen presence. The door to the main facility slid open with a hiss, and they entered the command center. It was exactly as the scouts had reported, empty. The consoles were still running, but there was no sign of the crew. It was as if they had simply vanished. "Check for any data logs," Sarah ordered. We need to know what happened here. Her team fanned out, scanning the area. As one of the soldiers approached a console, the lights flickered and a low hum filled the air. Then, suddenly, the console screen blinked to life. A series of strange symbols appeared on the screen, followed by a message. "They're here. They're watching. Stay hidden." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The message was clear. Whoever had been here, they were not just dealing with the unknown, but with something far worse. Someone had been watching, and whoever it was, they knew humanity had arrived. But that was not all. As the team continued to search the facility, they uncovered a chilling discovery. Hidden deep within the outpost's database were plans for a weapon, a new kind of force that could strike at the very heart of humanity's newfound strength. It was a weapon unlike anything they had ever seen, designed specifically to counter humanity's most powerful ships. "This is bad," Ross's voice crackled through Sarah's comlink. "These plans, they're meant for us." It was a warning. A threat that had been lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. The weapon was designed to take down their fleet, to end humanity's rise before it could become a galaxy-wide force. "We need to get back to the ship," Sarah said, her voice cold and calculated. "And we need to get that information back to the fleet commanders. They'll need to prepare." But just as they were about to leave, the building shook. A loud, metallic roar echoed through the corridors. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the air crackled with static. Something was coming. "Move, move, move," Sarah shouted, and the team scrambled to get back to the transports. But as they turned to make their escape, the outpost doors slammed shut with a deafening clang. The lights flickered and went out, plunging them into total darkness. A low growl filled the air, the unmistakable sound of something moving, something large. They weren't alone anymore. The hunt had begun. The enemy was here, and they were ready to strike.